Hello, and thank you for tuning into the frequency of a new awareness. Today, we're going to continue the drama of the Catholic Church in the time during the Second World War. What was the relationship between the Vatican and Mussolini and the fascists of Italy and Hitler and the Nazis? Today, we're going to take a quick, closer look and see what they did and what they did not do. In 1995, Pope John Paul II issued a message on the 50th anniversary of World War II, stating that the Christians of Europe need to ask forgiveness, even while recognizing that there were varying degrees of responsibility in the events that led to the war and the Holocaust. Over the next several years, against the advice of certain cardinals, John Paul made a startling call for the Church to engage in the purification of historical memory. For a church that considers popes to be infallible, perfect in truth on matters of dogma, the idea of acknowledging its failures in the mud of history was a dramatic shift. In time, John Paul issued a line of apologies to church victims and for such mistakes as the persecution of Galileo and the past institutional support of slavery. The Pope, who had endured the Nazi horrors in a Polish seminary, took special note of sufferings inflicted upon Jews. In 1998, 25 years ago, the Vatican issued We Remember. John Paul expressed hope that it might help to heal the wounds of past misunderstandings and injustices. So, in that statement, we remember, we can read, and it's typical Catholic Church manner. We cannot know how many Christians in countries occupied or ruled by the Nazi powers or their allies were horrified at the disappearance of their Jewish neighbors, and yet were not strong enough to raise their voices in protest. For Christians, this heavy burden of conscience of their brothers and sisters during the Second World War must be a call to penitence. So God asked the question of forgiving. We deeply regret the errors and failures of those sons and daughters of the Church. Great. Here again, the Vatican and the Catholic Church did the same thing what they did throughout history, put the responsibility and the blame of their choices onto other people. And in this particular case, the Holocaust and the persecution of the Jews, they said, oh, our Catholic and Christian brothers and sisters should have spoken up. These were just simple people. They were afraid just like everybody else. But the Pope, anybody in the Vatican, were in their golden temples, didn't say a word. And even now, they put the responsibility for asking for forgiveness and dealing with the past on other people, but never mentioned themselves. You know, looking in the mirror, not the Catholic Church. So, here again, we see the Vatican is not interested in speaking the truth or taking responsibility for their action that are clearly in the history books. But now, let's look at it a little closer. What did they really do or not do in regards to the fascists in Italy and the Nazis in Germany? Mussolini himself hated the Catholic Church. He had nothing to do with Catholicism. And he was not married to his partner, but he had children with her. But he knew that in order to get control over the government in Italy, he needed the help of the Pope. So the first thing he did, he started to marry the woman of his children and got all his children baptized. And then he made a deal with the Pope. And the Pope agreed to the deal because he wanted to strengthen the role of the Vatican and the Catholic Church in Italy. So it was a deal of power. Mussolini needed the help of the Catholic Church to get control of the government and the Italian people, and the Pope wanted more power and influence for the Catholic Church. So, morals? No. But let's look. Mussolini bowed to the Vatican's request that only books approved by the Church be used to teach religion in the schools. He agreed to close down gambling halls. He provided state recognition of the Catholic University of Milan. He announced his opposition to divorce and moved to save the Bank of Rome, closely tied to the Vatican, which was on the verge of bankruptcy. Crucifixes were back in the country's classroom, and church holidays were added to the civil calendar. In return, Pius ordered the priest who led the Catholic Popular Party to resign. At the time, the Catholic Popular Party were the third strongest party in Italy. And as a result, the party was disbanded. Mussolini went about gutting Italian democracy, solidifying power in himself and in the state of a fascist state. In 1929, the Holy See in Italy agreed to the Lateran Accords, which the historian Father Hubert Wolff has called a pact with the devil. The Vatican City became a sovereign state with ownership of key properties in Rome. Catholicism became Italy's official religion. The Holy See, the Pope, had freedom in appointing bishops. Italy paid about 92 million in compensation for parts of Rome and the Papal States. And the Vatican reinvested about 60% of its windfall in government bonds. So here we see the Vatican and the Pope was interested in power and money, just like they were throughout history. As we have seen in previous videos, you have heard that the Catholic Church is about power and money. And even though we can see today that the Pope regretted his actions, he still made the deal. The Vatican had not protested the ejection of Jewish children or Jewish teachers from the schools, nor that of Jewish professors from the universities. But in 1937, neither Parcelli nor the Pope's two emissaries to the government had ever uttered a word to challenge the government's decision to treat Jews as a danger to a healthy Italian society. See, here we see the Pope Pius XI made a deal with the fascists and Mussolini to get more influence and power to the Catholic Church within the country and the regime. But it backfired. And when he landed in the land of regret and tried to speak up against what the government did to the Jews, his voice was drowned out by the Catholic Church as a whole. He was alone in trying to speak up on behalf of the Jews. But the Catholic Church and the Vatican as an institution stood behind Mussolini and the fascists and supported what they did. Now, when we look at the relationship of the Vatican and Hitler and Nazi Germany, we have to divide it into two parts. First is Pope Pius XI. He was the Pope when Hitler came into power until 1939. And he opposed Hitler and the Holocaust, and he spoke up, not too loudly, but he openly refused to have any contact with Hitler and wanted to have nothing to do with the Nazis. But that changed in 1939. Pope Pius XII came to be Pope, and Hitler saw a new opportunity to make contact, and so he did. He sent Richard von Hessen as his emissary to secret negotiations with the Pope, and the Pope was open to negotiate. And the Pope's major concern was only the Catholic Church. He wanted the Nazis to stop the suppression of the Catholic Church and to keep the priests safe and secure continued influence in the German society. And he wanted to restore, religious education through Catholic priests in schools and just to have religion, or especially Catholic religion, not being persecuted in Nazi Germany. So this was his only concern. And he achieved that somewhat. Hitler made concessions because he wanted himself the public attention that he was, having a new ally in the Pope, which did not really happen. The negotiations continued throughout the war, and nothing concrete really was established. But we have two real things that came up, and one was already early in the negotiation. I think in the first or second meeting, it came up that a lot of Catholic priests are on trial in German courts for sexually abusing children. So this was already an issue before the war, during the Nazi time, and it's very little known. So after the Pope heard this, he immediately ordered all records of priests who were involved in any of this, or that could connect the Vatican having knowledge of this, to be destroyed. So and secondly, the Pope Pius XII absolutely never spoke up against the Holocaust. Even after, Richard von Hessen in their negotiations made remarks about racial, issues in Germany that were being dealt with. And it was clear that the Jewish Holocaust was meant with that. But the Pope never mentioned anything against this and defended the Jews in any shape or form. So that's why we have two popes here involved, and one spoke up silently, quietly, a little bit, and the other one did not. He was only interested in his organization, not speaking up for a broader moral values for all of society. So, you know, the Catholic Church, was impartial. They only thought about themselves. They didn't really care about what happened to other people, as long as we can maintain the power of the Catholic Church and the influence of the Catholic Church in the society. That was the only concern of the Pope. So here we see that the Vatican really had an attitude of indifference as in general. So everything was about power and maintaining influence. Nothing else. No moral. We don't stand up for moral values in general. We are not interested in that. So we see it's just business as usual in the drama of the Catholic Church. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.